You guys know that our show follows Sunday Night Football every week, and what a matchup we have for the final Sunday Night Football matchup of the season. It's the Bills, it's the Dolphins for the AFC East title. The Bills, 2.5-point favorites, as we welcome back our friend Bryan Hayes from TSN Radio to talk about Week 18, and we'll begin with this huge matchup. And our mutual friend Luke Wilson, Bryan, has stated twice on this show this week that he believes the Finns will prevail and the Bills will lose. How confident are you feeling about Buffalo going into this game?
I'm feeling pretty confident because I don't have confidence in Miami. I really don't, Jay. And I don't think it's a surprise that Luke and I are seeing things differently when it comes to the NFL. He and I go at it all the time on our show. And I understand where he's coming from with the Bills. Believe me, I'm not making a case for why the Bills have been rock stars or why I think they'll go in there and steamroll Miami. But coming out of the bye, they have won 4 straight. They have found a way to win games and keep their season alive, where Miami has, I think, been fraudulent against good teams all season long. Yes, they got a win against Dallas a couple of weeks ago, but if the Cowboys had any concept of stopping a 2-minute drill, they would have lost that game. And Miami got crushed, embarrassed last week against Baltimore when Baltimore was coming off an emotional high against San Francisco the week before. I also have more faith in Josh Allen than I do Tua. I think Allen's going to show up and play big. And I read a stat today that would suggest that there may not even be a home field advantage for Miami. They're expecting upwards of 52% of the fans in that stadium to be Bills fans, which is pathetic if it's the case. I mean, Miami fans should be embarrassed, Jay, if Buffalo Bills fans and Bills Nation, Bills Mafia are going to come in there and take over. But if that ends up happening, it's not even home field advantage. The weather's going to be beautiful. It's all good. It's basically a neutral site game. And if that's the case, I like Buffalo on Sunday night.
But let's just say your friend Luke is right. And let's say Miami wins. Now, Bryan, there is a pretty realistic path for Buffalo to not make the playoffs in that scenario. Because if they lose and say the Steelers beat the Ravens with no Lamar Jackson, as we know, and the Jags, they beat the Titans, Trevor Lawrence comes back, he looks good, and the Texans and Colts just don't tie, which seems pretty likely, then Buffalo's not in. And if that happens, Bryan Hayes, is Sean McDermott done as Buffalo Bills head coach?
I don't think he will be. I don't believe he will be for a few different reasons. One, this is a marketplace, a small market that was really in a dark place prior to him showing up, right? You remember this, Jay. I mean, there was a 15 to 20-year run where they were a completely irrelevant team and a lost ship. And Sean McDermott showed up and changed the whole culture, the whole expectation. And they have been a winning program ever since. Even if they lose on Sunday, they've had a winning season. It will fall well below expectations. It's not excusable. They're a good enough team, clearly, to be a playoff team. But I don't think McDermott will go anywhere because of what he's established since he's got there. I think Brandon Beane, the GM, is in his corner. We saw the game in Kansas City a few weeks ago where the game ball was handed to McDermott by Beane in the room. I don't recall the last time I saw that. That's how much support I think the head coach has from the GM. So I think McDermott has built up enough goodwill. Obviously, if they get crushed, it could be a different story. If it's a really embarrassing performance, if the media in Buffalo really turns on them. But I think McDermott, again, has done a good enough job to keep his job. And really, that dates back to when he first got there. I don't sense that he's, an overly modern, game-changing coach in terms of his philosophy, in terms of his aggressiveness, in terms of the way he approaches the game offensively. He's a defensively minded coach. I could reason with them moving off him, Jay, for sure. But I think McDermott will return next year, even if they lose.
I see that Green Bay Packers helmet over your shoulder, buddy, and I know you're thinking about this weekend where your Packers play their division rivals, their longtime rivals, the Chicago Bears. It's a win-and-you're-in situation for your Packers. But I got to say, the Bears have been better. I'm not sure why they've been better, but they've been better as of late. What's your confidence level in the Pack heading into this weekend?
I'm confident because of who they're playing here. They've owned the Bears forever, right? They opened the season laying a beating on the Bears at Soldier Field. But I am sensing some deja vu here, Jay. It's very similar to the situation they found themselves in last year where last year was Week 18 at Lambeau against the Detroit Lions, a divisional rival who had a great second half last season and were coming on strong. And we saw what happened, right? The Packers, they choked that game away and they threw a playoff position away. It's basically the same situation here. The difference is Jordan Love's the quarterback instead of Aaron Rodgers, and I actually feel pretty good about that. I think it's a big moment for Love to prove that he's here, he's stabilized the ship, and I think it's a massive moment for Matt LaFleur, the head coach. He does not have a good history in these big games, these must-win games against opponents that he should know well. So I feel good about the Packers because of their history against the Bears. I like that the pressure's on them at home. They should get the job done, but they didn't get it done last week and last season in the same situation. That makes me a little bit nervous. They're still the youngest team in the league. It's going to be a close game, but I think the Packers will find a way to win.
And if you're a Bears fan, you say we win anyway because we've already locked down that #1 overall pick. What a trade. What a trade for the Bears. All right, Brian, we have a little tease for everybody. Starting next Wednesday, you're now going to be seeing Bryan Hayes and myself together every Wednesday for a brand new segment on this show. Can't tell you what it is. Can't give you that much information. But it all gets started next Wednesday. Brian, how fired are you up? Fired up are you about that?
I just lost you, Jay, right at the end.
Oh,
you dropped.
Good, because I screwed up.